this is my second video occurring on the same walk where I'm talking about a little bit of identity as being the thing that fetters us, that gives us advantages, and that has other people have a problem with us, have us have a problem with us, have us have a problem with other people having a problem with us, having a problem with them, and so our identity is it's maybe a saving grace, a blessing, and a nightmare at the same time. And I could say maybe a lot of our conflict in life comes from the fact that we are yet we are resources to one another, human beings, whether our labor, our intellect, our attention, our potency, our creativity, our fears, our pains, our shortcomings, our debt, all the things that can be called us and somehow ascribed to our identity, whether as credit or debt, are yet a resource to one another. And so we are necessarily in contention with one another and even within ourselves. Maybe you could say that a lot of our growth comes from the fact is from our inner contention, and then by our inner contention we draw outer contention, and how we contend with that is a lot of how our identity is formed. A lot of people need a problem to have identity, so that's why you have like a lot of like tough people like starting a lot of drama, adventurism for what would seem like nothing, but it's because we need identity and we are resources for one another. But I wanted to say that that's still yet arbitrary, and to prove my point is that so our identity is always changing from moment to moment. I'm not the same person as I started this walk, but how I'm appreciated by others also is somewhat arbitrary and malleable. So when I was a young person, like some people I might still look young, and I'm giving myself a pat on the back, but I can get carded around places I have no business purchasing illegal substances that are not suited, that are not advantageous, but mostly so. But so at different times I was once like a church goer, and I was really about that. Like I would go home and I'd read the word standing alone in my room all through the night in an uncomfortable position to make it retain more, because they say pain retains. So I'd be like reading the Old Testament of the Holy Book in awkward positions in the middle of the night, like maybe a brilliant person or a strange person. And then also I would be going to church, truly engaging with the worship, truly enjoying the worship, truly enjoying the testimony, truly enjoying the honor of giving what alms I had, being a very humble person my whole life back, with grace and solidarity, having a lot of admiration for the eloquent speakers, even though a lot of them had a problem with me coming from it at that angle. So I've always been about that. I think sometimes me sitting there, it was kind of like a non-member of the choir being sung to, like an honorary secret member of the choir and the pulpit being ministered to by the choir and the pulpit, and relishing in it and being disrespected for it at the first time is who I've been. And a lot of that has not changed in my life, and I just maybe got more dynamic, where if you really call the essence of a lot of your deeper teachings, you can see the value in anything, and all things have value and detriments, just like nature. Nature has plants that are a benefit and a detriment just the same, and it's more so how you approach things and leave things alone and engage things as it's suitable. And probably they say wisdom, but there might not be a such thing as wisdom, because nobody has a monopoly on what wisdom is. And if they did, they would no longer be living, because they'd no longer be learning it, so it'd no longer be wisdom, because it's not helping you live and learn. Because you need to make mistakes to learn, and you need to learn to live. So maybe wisdom in itself is an oxymoron, and is futile, and more so of a pretentious entitlement in itself. But some people can sell wisdom better than others, and so I had a couple of different thoughts, which is that, so the order Osho says that a half truth is more detrimental than a bald-faced untruth, and that's because it has enough truth to get its foot in the door for some wiggle room, and then the untrue part, or the part that's sold as different than what it is, it does the real damage. So it gets a foot in with the half truth, and then the truth of it, and then the untruth does the damage like that. So like get in and out like a bank robber. But there's also such a thing as like half master. That's like an older term from I think from Europe, in like your Queen's English, and they used to refer to something as a half master. And I think that many of us like who do like maybe YouTube or such might be something of a half master. And even some people who may be like, to make an analogy, like professional soldiers might be a half killer, a half soldier. Now what do I mean by that? So I was listening to like a person, they were like a military background, and they were talking about their experience in the military, and then they were like they're showing some clips of like some recruits in boot camp. And like also at the same time, I think I saw like a like kind of what was being cited by other military members as an egregious attention-seeking video by a ranking military person engaging with like one of these social media platforms. And you really can't discount the person, because this attention really has become the new currency, and we all need currency to exist. So a lot of people are hurting for attention, whatsoever your background or standing or accomplishments. We're all looking for attention somehow, because we all have to. And a lot of us can't stand each other. Having attention is the all thing that we all want for ourselves and for certain people, and the things that we can't stand about other people is that attention is so great, but who the hell are you to want attention, and who the hell are you to go about attention that way? So I'm not mad at the person, but when you look at like a military person, right, like especially like from the West, I'm not saying all settings, but at least from the West. So you grew up entitled by and large, and privileged by and large, relatively speaking, to your counterparts and cohorts among the earth and across different periods of time, probably the future too. We're about to have it as hard as we did in the past. And so you've been more so entitled, and you could choose any line of work or any endeavor that you wanted to, but you chose the military, or maybe heaven forbid you had that chose for you. But nonetheless, you never actually had an authentic problem in your life that was really like on you, like an intelligent interest, an intelligent agent interested in your destruction, if not your untimely death. You haven't experienced that, and if you have, you haven't experienced it close to home. And if you have, it hasn't been when you didn't have the advantage on your side or the numbers on your side, likely, but not necessarily. But you grew up like this, and then now you call yourself having a problem with someone across the world that you haven't met yet or been introduced to yet. But it's because of your allegiance to a vague thing called a nation, which is an ideal in the most forgiving of terms, and is this big conglomerate of power, interest, contention, inequity, suffering, oppression, profiteering, raping, all that. But you're somehow endeared to that, and you love that, and you're identified with that. But you're so much so that you have a problem with someone that you've never met before. So you go to boot camp, and these people are really like, they're really tough now, and they're giving you a bearing now, and you're pissed now, and you have a bearing now. You have some anger, but you haven't actually experienced real conflict yet. But yet you're having the instincts and the reactions of actually having a conflict. So maybe your buddies in boot camp are punching you when you're training, and you're responding to that what you felt there. But you actually didn't receive a proper blow from someone that had a problem with you and an interest in your death yet. But so what I mean is that you are as you engage with a prop, because your different training obstacles, your different training foes, that little picture of an antagonist, your very instructors who are yet against you on different levels, maybe they're your actual competition, maybe they're your real competition and your real problem that you haven't understood yet. And so in that sense, maybe it is real, the antagonism. But for the intents of this analogy, you're having a problem with something, but you haven't actually had a real problem yet. So you're engaging with a prop, and you're actually developing a degree of toughness and meanness and bearing. So you actually have a little bit of a delusion right there, because you have a mean bearing, as though you've been through a lot, you've been through hell, you've been through fighting before, but you actually haven't met your foe yet. And then when you do meet your foe, you have this anger and this edge to you that's not actually built. It's not actually reciprocal to real experience yet. You haven't taken your first licks yet. You haven't been shot at yet, or even if you have, you're doing so with a false sense of yourself where you have a little bit antagonism that you brought somewhere that hadn't been given to you by a real situation yet. So either your antagonism with another person is somewhat false, and also your understanding of yourself having antagonism with a person is somewhat false. And then you may actually draw a real antagonism because of how you approach the situation more so than what the situation had to be. So now you actually do have a little bit of real experience, but you're still maybe a little bit meaner than you have to be, or maybe not as mean yet as you have to be. But in a sense, there's a certain skewing of reality that comes with you engaging with this prop that gave you a certain skill set, no less, that might actually help you get over on another person and slay that person in a heinous way, an untimely way, unnecessary way, if we're speaking to absolute terms. But you are something of a half soldier because you're something of your experience is not entirely real yet. It was your training was maybe safe, or it was structured, or it was more of a prop. Whether it was a realistic prop or not, it was something of a prop, and you had mercies and support that weren't reciprocal to a real situation, the real situation that would give you that demeanor, that bearing, that edge that can yet be effective. But I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and it's effective, and it's gotten a lot of people killed, and it's probably got a lot of people into getting killed, and probably got a lot of people over on other people. But there was something about it that was skewed. But by engaging with this prop, I'm saying you maybe were at one point something of a half soldier or a half killer, and you did yet become an actual killer. But something about your background and your experience, even of killing, had been a little bit false and skewed on some degree, just because of the contrived nature of your training and your engagement, and the purpose of your training and the purpose of your engagement and the outcome of your engagement, maybe upon arbitrary or delusional terms, if we're being honest. But then, so now you take that back. Now I'm somewhat similar to that in being like a half master. I would say a lot of content creators who really do maybe have something to say might be something of a half master, where I'm engaging with this camera as though I were teaching something, leading something, offering wisdom. One, I hadn't been asked for that wisdom, and also I'm not engaging with a real person directly one-on-one. So the terms of me engaging with this platform in this video are somewhat skewed and delusional, similar to a half soldier, a half killer. But yet I am amounting to maybe some degree of insight, and then amounting to something degree of teaching and some degree of mastery, but yet not being a full master, if I'm being honest. But I'm saying that maybe the half mastery is yet does a lot of work, because the half masters are doing maybe they're doing maybe more quantity. So you have more quantity of teaching by us half masters, and then you might have a handful of people that could approach what you might actually appreciate as being a master, and they probably do less work but more impactful work. So I'm not saying that's one is better than the other, but they actually do yet both serve a function and get a body of work done. And so you can, in brutal terms, I don't mean to be flippant with this, but you can maybe say there's like a half killer, which is like you were benefited with like a prop of some kind of training and so forth, and it might have actually amounted to you hurting people. But then you actually have like maybe a real killer who never got any kind of like arbitrary training, and they just really had a problem on them or against another person from the jump street, and their experience is more so reciprocal to reality, and maybe they might be more effective that way, or maybe less so. But it's just for analogy. But what I want to say is that so a lot of people would say like well, you need to keep that master stuff to yourself. You need to keep your lessons to yourself. Why don't you just hurry up and shut the hell up and not try to present yourself like that. But what I want to say is that by engaging with a prop like a video like this, I might actually be, by enunciating my thoughts, I'm actually getting in touch with my thoughts, and then I'm also sharing that value, which is one of the, maybe a blessing from on high to have access to platforms like this. So what I meant to say is that by us enunciating our journey of learning, our pretensions of mastery, our pretensions of teaching, pretensions are not absolutely arbitrary in themselves or useless in themselves, because it's kind of like that adage, fake it till you make it, and that's actually somewhere also where I want to go with this, is that I think that we need to be outside more. So if you want to be a stronger content creator quicker, do so outside. If you want to be a better musician quicker, do so outside. If publicly, I mean, and in the outdoors and in public. If you want to be a badass, do so publicly outside. If you want to be a very like sexy person, practice, bring your swagger and your sex appeal outside, public, and I think you're gonna have a quicker turnaround. Really, I experienced that with the guitar last year, so I just meant to say that outside is better. But then I wanted to also say that so where I was going with this, a part about being outside and with the beginning of this video, is that we can have a different appearance at different times, and our experience and also our experiencing of ourselves amounting to our identity are constantly being fashioned, and there's like a feedback between what we say, do, and think, and what we become, and it's not settled at any point. Some people would say it goes beyond one particular lifetime, and then you could also say that there are different lifetimes within a lifetime. I know that, like when I'm talking about being like a secret choir member, being preached to by the choir, was like that. But so I was going to my family, and I was trying to hand over like a key of some kind, and my family has been really kind of like I think like mean-spirited as I've been going through some things, so I wasn't trying to deal with them. But there was like a person outside the back that lives there. I was like, excuse me, I was gonna try to ask if they could hand the key to my family, because I wasn't trying to deal with them. But I was probably bogus for doing that. I should have just been straight up. What I meant to say is that I somewhat scared that person with my current appearance, but my values and my passion has not changed since the time I was a church goer, tucking my shirt in as a very young man, and looking like an idiot, and understanding that I look like an idiot, but trying to be proper and chaste. A lot of that has not changed for me, nor the chastity or the abstinence. But I meant to say is that we can be appreciated as something way different than what we are, and we can become something way different than what we're appreciated as, and that's both beautiful and arbitrary, I think. So it's kind of, I didn't mean to be like scaring nobody, but it's actually, it might be some degree of growth that you can be that prudish, that chaste, and actually amount to scaring someone one day without trying to. But that's not, I shouldn't play with that, because like some of the way that us black men are maligned, like I see different videos about black people this and black people that, and black people are dangerous. That's dangerous. What's dangerous is to call black people dangerous, because as a society gets together and on board with writing us off and castigating us, that's the pretext to every form of heinous atrocity known to man, is that you first assault the image of a person. The content creator, I think Jason Black has touched on that, but also Kevin Samuels did a beautiful piece. I think it was called Mage. Kevin Samuels was an image expert, the great Kevin Samuels, and he was amounting his skill and the art of curating an image to like a mage. I think that's like a magical person, and that there's something magical about our image. But he was also saying the power, but also the blowback that can come from that. And so when I see people calling out the image of a black male, I've heard other black males say that some of us are the most appropriated and ripped off, but also affronted and hated. Sometimes we hate what we love and we love what we hate, and that's kind of the experience of us black males, and maybe it works in our favor, but a lot of it hurts. But all I meant to say is that that's really dangerous. But but what I want to say is that a lot of our dilemma in life is a function of our identity, both the blowback that we get, but also the experience of our own experience is somewhat limited by our identity. And maybe you could say that a lot of the things that we chase, like whether that's having a family, having cool experiences, having sexy experiences, having money, having clout, having all this stuff, is because we want a certain experience of our identity is what's more deeper than the actual experience in itself that we're after, or the whatever trapping we're after. It's more so the experience of ourself and our identity that we're after. But I think what might be truer and deeper is to let go of that, and that value can be ascribed or stripped from anything. I remember one time I was taking a vacation in Canada, and I walked away from my family that I was around at a picnic area, and I actually went like over some train tracks that were actually like, I think you weren't supposed to be walking there. And then I went to a beach where there's like a kind of like a sketchy beach that people didn't belong at, but there were yet a lot of people there, like not the least of which like little kids, but also like some maybe adolescents and young people that were watching over them. And then there was this little kid there, and they were like, because there were these cool rocks that had been like fashioned by water. They were like really smooth, and this little kid was like, jackpot. They thought they were so rich with these cool rocks. Like they had, those rocks were actual gold in their hand. And it was actually kind of cool because those rocks actually are kind of cool. Like, maybe should I be trying to steal that rock from that little kid? But there's about like 10 million of them right here, so I wouldn't have to. But dang, like if it's that much gold to that person, then maybe that rock right there that they have, that's the real gold. But all I meant to say is that it's the value was what they actually were the real value. That child was the real value, and anything that is beautiful to that child is therefore valuable, as valuable as that child is, which would make those rocks look beautiful like that. But I wanted to say, like, a lot of, I think, like, some people would say that are deep. So there was a person recently who tried to say that that the smell of baby lotion, baby powder, or the smell of a baby, like the different ointments and balms that you would put on a baby, that smell is actually God, is what someone said. And I think that highlights a lot when they say that, because one is that even the notion of God in itself, and as they use it there as an example, that might be a way to monopolize what actually is beyond approach. And it is specifically beyond approach, not because it is unapproachable, but because it is not limited. And so when you try to monopolize something, you try to fix a boundary, you try to put a definition of it, howsoever beautiful, grand, or subtle. You are somewhat arbitrary for that, and you are more so trying to monopolize that. So I think that you could maybe say that the word God might be the biggest monopoly in itself. If you think about how much money has been made over that word, and then how much pain, how much more than money is the entitlement. How entitled have people been around that word God, and how people approach that word? That might be the real problem. So it's not that God has, people would say don't talk about religion. It's not that God is so bad. Trying to monopolize what is being invoked and inferred by the word God is what the problem is. That's where the brutality is. Entitlement, brutality, entitlement, brutality, entitlement, brutality. So you say that this smell of baby, the smell of a baby ointment or balm is God. So one, you try to appropriate and monopolize in an arbitrary sense what is implied by the word God. Then you try to further limit that to the smell of a baby. Then you maybe try to, with the subtle maneuver you did, is that you try to associate yourself with that understanding and also the potence of both those experiences of what's the smell of a baby ointment, and also the experience of what's called God. You try to associate yourself with all that, and then maybe further gain attention or entitlement from your association with that is what's disingenuous about that. But yet the smell of baby ointments is a deep experience, because a lot of us would say, so what are your deepest thoughts in life? I think that maybe our deepest thoughts are more so a blessing and given to us than our own creation. Because one is that, so I'm walking now outside and I'm having cool ideas by walking outside. Now, what came first, the cool idea or outside or the cool idea? In the deepest sense, they're not anything different. And so you could say that we're more so experiencing our own thoughts as a function of our environment, but our unique propensities, enjoyments, fears, discipline, spontaneity, freedom, amount to our different associations. So there's always a paradox. So the most creative thing you can do is to associate two things. Maybe the most uncreative thing you can do is also to associate something. So when that person said that God is the smell of baby ointment or balm, that might be the most uncreative thing that a person has ever said, but it also might be the most creative thing that someone has said. So what they did is that they drew they free associated in that moment. They associated something. And maybe that we could say that the only thing that we may ever do, that we can do, is to associate things according to our unique experiences, disciplines, pains, joys, sharing, failures, lessons. All that amount to our unique form of associating things, and that is beautiful, that is profound, but it is also equally as limiting. And so maybe our understanding of our identity is a function of associating for better and for worse. And so maybe the most creative thing we can do and the most freeing thing we can do is to unassociate with different things, no less than our own identity, is where I was coming within this video. But I was saying that maybe our deepest thoughts in life had already been experienced, because if you take away a reference, the great Einstein has said that time is relative, and a way I would think of that is that it's relative to a reference point. So I'm standing upon what's called the Earth, and that's at a certain angle to what's called the sun. And that's giving my understanding of my present moment. And then as I understand other things on Earth existing in cycles, and my recollection or anticipation of future angles of this Earth and its relationship to the sun, and maybe the moon also, if no less the heavenly bodies, but for an ordinary layman person, the sun, the moon, and the Earth. The sun, the moon, that kind of sounds like a song. But that's giving me my understanding of linear time as a progression, which, as we're going in a circle, all things exist in a circle. So one could say that maybe nothing actually moves if everything is a circle, and if it does, it comes right back where it started, and it starts where it came from. So it's a circle in that point, if anything. But then we have a linear understanding of time, and that's relative. But what I meant to say is that But I think that our deeper, so if things really are existing in absolute terms, then you could say that in an absolute term, a reference, what is relative is redundant and does not have meaning in an absolute context, which even the word context and absolute might be oxymoron. But in absolute terms, there would be no relativity. So you could say that in absolute terms, there would be no time. And in absolute terms, any 2 points of anything existing or occurring to a person are not different. So whatever shall occur to us has already occurred to us. And what has already occurred to us may occur to us again. And so what I want to say is that maybe our deepest thoughts in life are not when we're imbibing with these dumb plants, or when we're doing like freeform content like this. But it might have actually been when we were very small, is when we had our deepest thoughts. Why would that be? Because we had the least sense of identity when we were young, because we had nothing to identify with, or we weren't brutalized and handed an identity. Today I was at a coffee shop, and I was kind of sweating a person about a job application that they had actually recommended that I put in, and then I came back to ask them about it, and they're like, who are you? And but it got me, and that's a lot of times people have such a linear understanding of time, is that they think that what's called 2 weeks ago or a week ago is a long existent, and they actually, it shows you how it limits a lot of persons thinking, but also your recollection, this linear sense of time. So I talked to a person, and I have a clear recollection of our conversation, and I also don't take notes. And because I was copying the person off of the Malcolm X movie, where I stopped taking notes long ago, and it made me a little bit more, I think it gave me a better command with recollections. But I walk in there, and a lot of people was like, it's strange because I know exactly who you are, and I can remember exactly the conversation we had and almost what you had on that day, and a lot of what you said and who we were talking to and where they're standing. But they're like, I meet a lot of people. I don't even like, I don't know what you are, and I had recommended that you put an application 2 weeks, what's called 2 weeks ago. But it just shows you how that can limit us. But what I meant to say is that so I think that we had less of an identity when we were young, and we might have actually experienced our deepest thoughts when we were young. So what are your deepest thoughts? Your deepest thoughts, I think, would be an experience like smelling baby ointment or baby balm when you were yet free of an arbitrary permanent sense of identity. Or I think if you actually go back to like, what are the deepest things you can recall? Some of mine would be like around like bicycles, like riding bicycles and motorcycles. But I think a lot of us, if we go back to the deepest thing we can recall, it might actually be a sidewalk. Because, when you were young, you were probably being taken around different places and different walks. And so you would appreciate a sidewalk deeply if you did not have any sense of identity. And I think that might actually be the most beautiful part of taking a walk, is that you are seeing for the first time, because the motion of walking makes you forget about yourself to different degrees, and then also, so you experience what's in front of your face, and you can actually appreciate the beauty of a sidewalk or anything, or nature no less, when you're forgetting about yourself. So the walking is the forgetting, and then the witnessing is the experiencing, and the experience is the witnessing, with the beauty of the walking, but also the vitality of the walking, of moving your body. All of that is dynamic and profound, is so maybe the beautiful part about walking or running is that you more and more experience the perception of enjoyment and understanding what's in front of your face, where normally we can't see anything but what's in front of our face, no less behind our face. And I think if you could see behind your face, you might see what's called God. But I wanted to say that I had one more that I wanted to tie in with that. It's a lot of what I was talking about with the previous video, in saying that Lee Mubai doesn't exist. He had said that, and that other Cole person, I think the movie was called House of Flying Daggers, was equating himself to the wind. And that might be about the deepest we can get, and it would be similar to that experience of being a baby, where we're experiencing what's in front of our face without an arbitrary or permanent sense of identity, in the true sense of the word experiencing, as maybe the deeper thoughts we may ever experience had been when we were very small like that, or what's called small like that. And it might be what we get back to. And I had also thought about, there's something, sometimes the poles, two poles are very similar. So if you think about what would be the most beautiful thing you can experience, it might have been those thoughts about when you were a child. Now, what would be the most egregious thing or troubling thing you could experience? It would be some form of trauma, like maybe having to run for your life or being pressed for your life with the implicit and imminent threat of danger to your very life. That experience of adrenaline, if you felt that, it's similar to what you would experience as a baby, where you are being shattered of your identity on some level, because you've never experienced someone that actually wants to take your life right now, right here, right now. There you go, you're dead. No, a lot of people haven't experienced that. And when you do experience something like that, it might actually shake your identity, because can this happen? Can someone feel this way about me when I haven't done what I think would make them that mad to do that, when I maybe don't know them, or why they would want to do this to me? That can shatter your identity. And then also I think a lot of it, we have one of the more, maybe what people say, what is naive, what is mature? Maybe the most naive thing to do is to ascribe a sense of maybe linear is juvenile, plain and simple. Your understanding of linear time, of what you call linear time, makes you juvenile. Your understanding of cause and effect makes you juvenile. Your understanding of fairness makes you juvenile. When a lot of things are I've said in other videos alinear, but I think illogical, but I think a better term than illogical would be alinear. It's not logical, it's not linear, but it's also linear, and it's also beyond linear, is what would be alinear. And our experience and also our inputs and outputs are also equally not linear or alinear. They're not linear, and they're not linear, but they're both and also not, which would be alinear. And a lot, like what I do with this content and this video, is that I'm bringing what I think are my best ideas, my best artistry, my best music, and I'm getting a handful of sunshine and flowers here and there, seldom. And a lot of times I'm not getting what you would think would be commensurate, and that it might should be better, because some people would say there's no strength without resistance, but maybe there's no strength with resistance. Because when you have resistance, you have cause and effect. So if I push hard, this is going to push back, and I'm going to get stronger, and I can appreciate that, and I can work with that. But what happens if you? So would it be harder to get a row machine and push and pull for like 20 minutes, and you know about what you're about to do and what you're about to get back? Or would it be harder just to throw your hand out there for 20 minutes? Like those, now I'm talking heavy, like I don't know nothing about like those boxers and stuff, because I can't talk heavy like that. But I would imagine like shadow boxing, just throwing your hand out there for a long time, that might make you, that might be more exhausting than having resistance. Doing something without a linear return. Can you do something valuable? Can you do something arduous? Can you do something simple with and without, but more so without a linear yield? That might give you your greatest yield if you can, how long you can sustain that, where again, maybe long might be relative. Can you sustain a non-linear dynamic? So a lot of us black males, what's called a black male, and I've said in other videos that that's a bogus term in the first place, as is white, and it has to do with code systems and caste designations, both formal and informal, historically and presently. But what's called black males, we do get a lot of flack, and we do get a lot of what's alinear feedback. So we're doing cool stuff, we're getting spit in our face, we're loving on people, we're loving for people, we're loving by people, we're loving with people, we're loving about people, and getting a lot of what wouldn't seem linear with that. And then we're also at the same time having enough gall. Sometimes we're being called having gall, but sometimes we're calling ourselves having gall to maybe put on cool outfits, put on cool swag, put on cool lace fronts, and getting maybe mocked, sneered at, but also maybe envied and copied. And in the best senses, loved when it's maybe rare and appreciated. And we do yet get blessings. I'm not saying no one gets blessings. I can't say that, but we sure enough don't get them where we expect them, where we want them. More so, that would be more uncanny to get something where you expected it and where you wanted it. But the exception does prove the rule, so that's not impossible. But a lot of times it's when you least expect it is when you get your best and your worst. And in order to do that and to have something to experience of worth and value, there may be a lot of alinear activity and toil and work and love and support and passion and artistry and creativity and maybe a better word than all that would be associating. There might be a lot of associating, free associating, clever associating, arduous associating that amounts to these beautiful experiences that we hadn't thought of it like that or planned it like that, and that's yet beautiful. But we get a lot of flack that is not commensurate. I think commensurate means like equitable with what we're doing and what we're about. And similar to like when I was talking to that person that lives where my family does, and they ran away from me like I had a gun, but I was probably bogus for approaching them, being I am yet a stranger to them. But it's a function of my appearance, where I think I'm somewhat of a nice guy, but I might not look like that. And then a person that might look like that might be your these crazy killers that those very people who would run from me fetishize and worship, and they embrace all of the contradictions of these different killers, and they worship them. But those would probably be your more nice guys, and they probably would have had me wait out there while they bake me some cookies, and then and do different endearing things for me if I had the appearance of some of your actual dangerous killer people that can be the nicest looking of people. And so there again, in that case they would have an experience that wouldn't be linear. And then maybe me being what I'm about, I'm also having an experience that's not linear. But that's not here nor there. But it's just the fact that we can't judge anything or anyone because we don't know shit, none of us. And if we can have a few things to enjoy, a little bit of peace, a little bit of health, and more so sleep, we're doing pretty well. When you can, I said that linear thinking is juvenile thinking, but what I think what is maturity? My understanding of maturity is that you can appreciate the value and the experience of sleep is what maturity is, because sleep is really beautiful, and a lot of us that's going to be about the best thing we get to enjoy here and hereafter is what's called sleep. But if you want good sleep, you have to work. Yeah, you have to strive, you have to struggle, you have to sacrifice, you have to work. A lot of people, I've had family that has been underemployed for better parts of close to 2 decades, and they yet do beautiful some like beautiful art, but a lot of times they weren't engaged, and they had difficulty sleeping at night, like a lot of difficulty. And I think that so we all had that difficulty to a degree, and I think working gives the best sleep. The best experience of sleep comes after work, and maybe other activity, but I just meant to say that sleep is really cool, and it's one of the things that we do, damn it, get to enjoy. So one thing I can count on is that I'm somewhere gonna sleep. Whether I get to sleep comfortably or I'm slept by something or someone, I'm gonna yet get to sleep at one point, and that might be the real bounty. A life well, what is value in life? What is a life well lived? That child appreciating the beauty in the rock, but the child being more so the beautiful thing, and their appreciation also being beautiful is valuable. But then also just a life maybe supporting that child or making a world safe enough or worthwhile living for that child, whether or not I'm appreciated, whether or not I exist in that world, that might be the real work that would amount to good sleep at some point. But the other thing I want to say, this is what was leading me back. I'm gonna try to say this really quick. So a lot of people talk about street this. This is going to be the next video because I'm walking by a beautiful family. I'm not going to talk about this subject here, but I'm going to sign out with this one, and then I'm going to come back with just a little bit more. Peace.